Welcome to Melt University. This series will help you build your brand, inform you on a variety of career paths, and introduce you to top executives in sports and marketing. Now, here's your host, the president and CEO of Melt, one of the largest independent sports and event marketing agencies in the country, Vince Thompson.
Welcome back, students. Virtual Melt University. We roll on. College football, rocking and rolling. SEC football coming on board. Big Ten coming on board. ACC, Big 12, over the Pac-12 soon. And today's special guest is one of the preeminent marketers in the country. Dear friend, longtime mentor, one of the preeminent marketers in college sports and college athletics. Every summer, he's the most popular speaker at Melt University by far and away. And this podcast is probably going to be the greatest one ever you listen to. Rick Jones, the head captain of FishBait Marketing. Welcome, Rick, virtual Melt University.
Well, I'm glad to be here. You know, I always love to come to Atlanta and be face-to-face with your students, but I have to tell you, it's a beautiful day in the Low Country today. I'm sitting here in my office looking at the Bohicket River. I'm going to go down in about an hour and pull the crab trap out and probably have a dozen blue crabs for dinner tonight. So life's pretty good.
If I leave right now, I think I can be there in time for dinner.
I think you probably can. And you've been here. You've stayed here, which is always a good thing. So.
That's one of my favorite spots in the world, but we'll dive right into it. Before we move into FishBait, one thing we love for our guests to talk about is pursuing your passion with zeal. And your story is incredible because you've been able to combine your passion of being a student athlete and a coach and love of student athletes and college athletics into this amazing career, but throw it all the way back to old Atlanta and your passion and how you've translated that into today.
Well, you know, I'll be 67 in March. And, you know,
that's a young 67, by the way.
Somebody asked me the other day, they said, you know, Rick, when are you going to retire? And I laughed and said, I'm never going to retire. I think you retire to do what you love to do. And I still love what I do. I get up every day excited about, you know, the business and about ways to try to add value and new ideas and new things. But, you know, growing up in the South, growing up in Atlanta, college sports was just part of our DNA. You know, my dad had gone to Georgia Tech. He was a huge Tech fan. He loved college sports. He loved, you know, football. He loved basketball. It just was part of our family DNA. And I knew from the time that I guess I was in about the third grade that I always wanted to be a coach. And so, you know, the ability to play athletics and then to coach and be a head coach in college, to work as an administrator at a number of schools, it was a real joy for me because it was just something I really, really was passionate about. I felt like college athletics, you know, the name on the front of the jersey has always been more important than the name on the back of the jersey. And I love that. I love the whole team concept. And, you know, interestingly, being a coach was great training for running an agency because the first thing you realize, as a coach is you can't play. You better get some players. And that's the same thing with an agency. You know, you better get some talented people. I want to tell you young people out there, if you find yourself in a room where you're the smartest guy in the room, you need to get in a different room. I want to be in a room where I'm the dumbest guy in the room, and that's not hard to do.
Spot on.
But that's where you're going to learn. That's where you're going to grow. And so I've been fortunate to have been able to make a living in this crazy sponsorship world, to reinvent myself and my agencies many, many times, and not to be afraid to fail. I think, you know, part of, you know, hey, you know, sometimes you get rejected. Sometimes you get no's. Sometimes you get your butt kicked. That's okay. I'd rather be the guy that gets his butt kicked trying than the guy that's too timid to ever get in the ring.
Would you say failure is just a failure to try? Don't you learn more in failure than all your great successes?
Oh, of course. Success just breeds arrogance. You don't learn anything from success.
Mm-hmm.
You get fat and happy and stupid. Anytime you fail, you learn. The key is the old line: failure is rarely fatal. What you want to do is say, how do you learn from it? We did, Vince, an RFP the other day, and we rarely do those. That's just never been in my DNA. I'm not a competitive person that way. I mean, it's just not. But we thought we were really perfect for this, and we did a sorry ass job. I mean, we really did a bad job, and it forced me to go back and say, what should we have done differently? And I think, had we won, or had we even gotten into the finals, we'd be still patting ourselves on the back. Versus saying, nope, we got to get better because there's bigger game coming down the road, and we need to be ready for that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And, Coach, another thing that I'd like wisdom that we try to impart on these kids is that it's okay to be told no, and go back and learn why you were told no, dissect your failures, and most of all, never take rejection personally. And they're going to have to get used to this in this COVID and post-COVID world, right?
Yeah, I think, it's easy to reject people now, especially because you don't have to do it face to face.
Right.
But I like what you say about don't take it personally. On one hand, I say don't take anything personally. On the other hand, I say take everything personally. And that's talking out of both sides of my mouth. But what I'm saying there is take it personally enough to say, how do I get better? How do I improve? I want to tell people this about seeking a job. Sometimes the other guy's pretty good too. It may not have been you. Right. It may have been the other guy's better. And you learn from that. But also, we're both people of faith, and I really do believe God has a plan for everybody. And sometimes, Garth Brooks, you had his manager on, he had a song called Thank God for Unanswered Prayers. Sometimes you get a no that ultimately leads you to a great yes, a better yes for you. And I think that's part of what I hope people will take away from this. I'm a big believer in understanding your gifts. I think gifts are God-given, and I think it's our job to try to build upon our gifts, because I think you're going to make a living and a life out of your gifts. So identifying your gifts and then trying to be better at your gifts. I mean, let's face it, Tiger Woods, who didn't make the cut at the U.S. Open this time, he will be he'll be ready for the Masters. Because he's going to say, what can I take away from the failure this week?
I guarantee you he's on a driving range somewhere right now.
Right. I mean, he's trying to get better. And when you see the greats try to get better, then we all ought to learn to try to get better. So I think that's number one is gifts. I'm also a big believer in what I call riches and niches. You can't be great at everything. Be great at one or two things. I learned something years ago. I heard a young man who was he worked in the admissions office at Yale. Mm-hmm. And he was interesting. He actually was an African-American kid that had played defensive back at Virginia Tech. Mm-hmm. And then he had worked at the admissions office at Wake Forest before he became a part of the admissions office at Yale. And he asked the crowd that was there, he said, do you know how many people made perfect SATs that applied to Yale and didn't get accepted to Yale? Mm-hmm. And he said, it's about 50%. He said, because we can spot a phony. He said, we can see the phony that wants a little religion, a little arts, a little sports, a little this, a little of that. He said, that's not what we're looking for. I'm looking for someone that is a lot in two areas. I want somebody that goes deep and not go shallow. And so for those that are listening, think about where you can go deep.
Mm-hmm.
Think about where you can take a gift and be absolutely the best in the world at that versus being a mile wide and an inch deep. Be an inch wide and a mile deep.
Bloom where you planted, right, Coach?
Yeah, I mean, it's clearly that. I mean, I'm a big believer that where you plant your seeds is where your harvest is going to be. We all have free will as human beings. We got choices every day, and we can make the choice today to say, I'm going to eat that extra piece of cake and gain 5 more pounds, or I'm going to say, no, I'm going to go for a walk, or I'm going to go for a run, or we all make choices. And I think there's a tendency in society right now to want to blame somebody else for all of our failures.
Right.
And right. I just don't reject that completely. I'm a big believer. If it's to be, it's up to me. I have a personal responsibility. I have personal accountability. It's my fault. One of my favorite songs is Margaritaville, where Jimmy Buffett says, well, it's nobody's fault. And then he goes, well, it could be my fault. And then at the end, it's my own damn fault. And that's kind of the way life is.
My own damn fault. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, in a limited amount of time, because I'd love to talk about your illustrious career, how you started it, and then it led to the gym group, and then it led to Advantage, and you've represented Coke and MasterCard and Olympics and Bank of America and ESPN, and you've got FishBait, you've got Engagement, which is fan experience in college sports, which is going to be amazing. You work in the country music space and all of that, but from I want to look forward, because we can talk about your career all day. And 17 years and amazing, because I can remember the day that we reunited again, and you said that, I'm like, man, I want to be up there fishing with you at Guatemala. But from the perch you occupy, tell our students where you see the future of jobs and opportunities and employment in college athletics. Because we've had some great guests. We've had Ross Bjork at A&M and Alan Green and Greg McGarity. And it had not dawned on me. We talked about Kevin Warren and mental health. It did not dawn on me great careers in mental health for student athletes. But where do you see these careers, and how and what would you advise our students on campus right now to try to hone those skills when they're in the greatest professional laboratory in the world?
Well, in a simple way, everything is about adding value. And so where can you add value to whatever? It's about adding value. Now, I'm a big believer right now in college athletics that the number one attribute any institution has is its tribe. Even as great as Nick Saban is, even as great as Dabo Swinney is, even as great as Mike Krzyzewski is, they're not greater than their tribes. The Clemson tribe is bigger than Dabo. The Duke tribe is bigger than Mike. I think young people ought to look and say, how do I, identify my tribe? How do I know who's in my tribe? Secondly, how do I communicate to my tribe? Thirdly, how do I engage with my tribe? And ultimately, that will lead to how do I monetize my tribe? I really believe that's the direction that's going to go. And so people that can realize fans pay for everything in college athletics. They pay for everything. If they don't watch television, there are no television rights fees. If they don't come to games, there are no tickets sold. If they don't make donations, there are no buildings being built.
They don't buy Coca-Cola. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. It's all about the fan. And so I would say right now that a great skill to have is to be a fan anthropologist. To look and say, what do fans need? And we know fans need things differently, Vinny. A 30-year-old with 2 small children has different needs. We went to a university not long ago and said we did deep research and found that one of the reasons that young millennials were not coming back to games was they didn't have any daycare.
Right.
I mean, and so we said in the old days, mom, was there to take care of the kids, and you could go to Auburn and watch a game. Well, mom's moved to Boca, and she doesn't live next door anymore. And so what am I going to do with a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old? And we said, it's easy. You have an early childhood development curriculum at your university.
Bingo.
Have a child care on game day daycare, and let Susie come enjoy a Bloody Mary with her sorority sisters, knowing that her kids are being taken care of. And guess what? Because of Skype, I can look at Susie while she's interacting with Albie and doing her coloring book and watching Frozen for the 12th time. I mean,
it's a playbook out of Disney.
It is.
But it makes so much sense. But we're talking to people who don't necessarily run businesses, and you and I got to bang our head against the wall to reverse that mentality. But God, I mean, daycare and college athletics would be amazing.
Well, but it's just one thing. There's I tell everybody, there's no silver bullet, but there is a magic formula. The problem is the formula changes every day and changes for every institution. Now, here's one of my pet peeves too. I really believe there will be a pivot. And for the young people out there, I'll say this. I've always said this. If you can sell, you'll eat forever. If you can make it rain revenues, you're going to be fine. One of my favorite chapters in the little book I wrote, Analog Advice, is the chapter about don't tell me you can sell, just take me to the cemetery.
Right.
Just show me who you shot. I mean, I just want to, I shot him, I buried him. If you can sell, and here's what I think is going to happen, with no disrespect to JMI or Learfield or Fox or any of the resellers.
Don't get me started, but yes, go ahead.
Here's the deal. I want to tell every school that uses one of those, all that money they're keeping is your money. That's your money.
Wow.
And what's happened is you've gotten lazy and sorry, and so you've outsourced it to somebody that's making a living off of your brand. I think we're going to see a pivot. I think we're going to see schools going back.
I use the word seismic.
Yeah.
Right?
I think schools are going to go, that $1 million you're making, that's my million. I need that million. And therefore, I think there are going to be more opportunities for young people at institutions to take back the monetization process.
And that is brilliant. And we tell our students, they don't realize, Coach, that Auburn University Athletic Department is a $150 million company. That's a huge company. And within those companies, right at their front door are all of these opportunities to not only build a resume, but build a career and build a job skill. So, I mean, I think this is, you're opening up so many eyes, and we're encouraging them, hey, they're also the most sophisticated. But what turns Rick Jones on? What gets Rick Jones' attention? Because you get thousands of resumes. You got this big book out, Analog Advice in a Digital World, Baby Boomers' Words of Wisdom. We have the same publisher, the whole thing. If a kid is reaching out to you on LinkedIn or resume, and they got 3 to 10 seconds passing the billboard to get your attention, resume's a blind date, what gets your attention?
Well, I think one thing that gets my attention is I like to pay attention to who the references are. Number one, no one ever wrote down a reference of someone that hates you, right? I mean, if you put them down as a reference, they're probably going to say good things about you, but it will tell me the company you keep. On some cases, you may have someone there I already know. And therefore, I can call that person and say, hey, tell me about Susie, really about Susie, because you know her, she listens to your reference. But even more important, Vince, it may be somebody I don't know that I need to know. And,
bingo.
The hoodoos from that standpoint. So that's one thing I think. Secondly, I like people that will tell me what they've done.
Bingo.
You know, the best indication of future performance is past performance. And so I want to
say, I want you to say that again. Coach, say that again. I want the students to hear that and hear that and hear that.
The best indication of future performance is past performance, because I don't know you. I don't know how good you can be. All I can see is how good you are or how good you have been. And so it's okay to brag. My mother used to say, if you've done it, it ain't bragging. And so, you know, tell me that you started a lemonade stand at age 7. I'm impressed by that. I like initiative. Tell me that you worked with a charity and that you did this. Tell me that you were the third string tailback on your high school football team, but they elected you the captain. I mean, you know, it's okay. I mean, if you don't toot your own horn, no one else will. Now, you can't lie because, you know, you're going to get caught in those things. People are going to check.
Right.
You can't embellish the truth. But I think you should lead with the truth. I want to say one more thing, too. You asked me a great question about where I think the business could go on collegiate. I think college athletics departments are going to get into the real estate business bigger. They're going to figure out a way to use.
Explain that.
They're going to figure out a way to use their venues 365 days a year instead of 7 Saturdays in the fall.
Which it never makes sense to me anyway.
No, and so I think athletics are sitting on valuable real estate that can be utilized. I'll give you a great example. University of Louisiana in Lafayette has a beer called Ragin' Cajun beer. And they licensed that to a beer company that brewed it. I said, baloney, build a microbrewery at your stadium and brew your own Ragin' Cajun. And have that facing out. 365 days of the year, you can get into that from the outside, and 7 days a year, you can get at it from the inside. They're going to have to think differently.
Can you imagine how many weddings would be there? Could you imagine? Can you imagine how many weddings I'd be at Jordan Hare if there was a Tiger Brewery in the dadgum stadium?
In a COVID world, how many drive-in movie nights could you have had at the stadium where you could have socially distanced and watched a movie on a big screen TV on the grass because you've never been on the grass at Auburn? I mean,
Coach, I had a major company shoot me down because I advocated doing drive-in tailgating at all the vacant stadiums in all these college towns, and I was like, "What?" It's because so you and I. We're in the same old school of new school of thought and passion. And the answers seem to be so obvious, right?
Yeah. Well, the answer is this. Again, focus on your tribe. What do your fans want? Not what you want. You know, I named the company FishBait because it comes from the term you got to fish or cut bait, meaning you got to do something. But it also comes from the term you got to bait the hook to suit the fish and not the fisherman. You got to focus on fans. And sponsors need to focus on delivering value to fans. You know, I've watched how y'all pivoted. I watched Game Day. The Coke Zero Sugar Zone can't physically be there. That's okay. You made them virtually there. You know, and so y'all didn't say what's important to Coke. You said what's important to the fan. And then you delivered the value to the fan. That's the key. That's the only key.
Well, we like I said, you and I could go on all day, and I know you got to close up, and we're going to have you back on to finish this fascinating conversation because I want to unpack your career as well. But and I think all of our listeners know now why I've nominated you to be the commissioner of the ACC. By the way, in case you were wondering where that nomination may have come from, I threw your hat in the ring. What are your some? We've heard a lot from a lot of guests of like their go-tos, whether it's books or podcasts. We've heard Coach Wooden's name many times. But what? And it doesn't. And we don't want it to be sports or industry periodicals. But what's a go-to for the captain of FishBait marketing? Share with our students for learning, knowledge, inspiration, books, podcasts. Because you and I are information junkies.
Well, two places. Number one, everybody needs to read everything that Malcolm Gladwell has written.
Mm-hmm.
Blink, What the Dog Ate, The Tipping Point, Outliers. I mean, these are must reads because he thinks differently and writes differently about topical issues. That's number one. Number two, Vince, I've become a disciple of John Maxwell. John Maxwell is an Atlanta-based former minister that's probably the number one worldwide expert in leadership. And I've read everything he's written. I attend, watch podcasts. I attend events, both virtual and live events that he does. He's just a guy that simplifies things in a way that makes so much sense to me. And he's a guy that, I think he's 74 years old now. And, he seems to just be getting started. I mean, he's been a lifetime learner.
It's amazing. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah. I mean, and so, a guy like Ed Bastian at Delta, who's running a major company through a very difficult time, sees, John Maxwell as his guru, and I see him that too. So I would encourage everybody out there to Google johnmaxwell.com, and there's so much free information. He's like you guys.
It's amazing.
He's giving this stuff away because he wants to build leaders, because here's what I really do believe. We have a leadership issue in America right now. We're not
massive
leaders. And for those out there, I want to say this to all the young people listening out there. Listen, guys and gals, it's crowded at the bottom. There's room at the top. I mean.
Oh my God.
And you need to take this attitude. For whatever job you want, why not you? Why not you? Somebody's got to get that job. It might as well be you. There's a lot of mediocrity out there, but where I think you're going to succeed in your career is by being a leader. And so trying to gain more leadership skills, I think, is essential for our future in college athletics. I think it's essential for our country.
Well, I can't let you go before you talk about you just said the word. My favorite saying that you have includes the word mediocrity. So I want you to say the statement, and then I want you to explain to them what exactly it means, because it still makes me laugh so much.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, every day that goes by, it's too true. It rings too true. My favorite saying is, remember, mediocrity is excellence to the mediocre. And
so what does that mean? Well, tell me break this down for our students, because they're going to need to go unpack this. Mediocrity is excellence to the mediocre.
Mediocre. Yeah. I mean, number one, we think there's a lot. The world is full of people that think good enough is good enough, and it's not. If you want to grow or you want to prosper, you got to be better. And here's what I say to young people. If you spot mediocrity in a person or in a business or in an organization, then run like hell. Get away from mediocrity, okay? Because what happens is it's contagious.
Ooh. Yep.
You'll start being mediocre too. Again, surround yourself with giants. Learn from giants and run away from midgets.
So learn from giants, run away from midgets, which you're basically saying, hey, get away from people who do not share your values or your work ethic or your beliefs or anything like that. And I mean, these words of wisdom I still just laugh my ass off when I said mediocrity is excellent to the mediocre, because how many meetings did you and I sit around and go, yep, mediocrity is excellent to the mediocre. We got to pack up and go get us a cold Coke or beer somewhere, because this meeting is over.
Yeah, well, there's no question about it. And here's what I want to say to people. Mediocre people want you to be mediocre like them. They don't want you to
why is that? Don't they want to drag you down, right?
Yeah, they do. They do. They absolutely do, because they don't have what you have. And so that's when I say, run like hell. Get away from those kind of people.
Well, again, we could spend all day, and we'll book some more times. But one of my favorite people in the world, one of my best friends, one of my greatest mentors. We hadn't even unpacked the value of relationships. We'll talk about that the next time. We got a lot to talk about. Head captain of FishBait, engagement, country music. We've been around the horn together we met in actually Birmingham in the 80s or 90s, goodness knows, way back, but 17th anniversary of FishBait on the island of Wadlama, where I really want to be right now, crabbing and fishing with him, one of the best idea guys on the planet. You guys follow Captain Rick Jones. You go buy his book, Analog Advice in a Digital World, Baby Boomers' Words of Wisdom for the Millennial Generation. Buy it before mine. Then mine's coming out, and that's probably all you need to know to tackle the world. But Rick Jones, Captain FishBait Marketing, we just so enjoy another annual appearance on Virtual Melt U, and we look forward to having you back on soon.
Thanks, Vince. Hope you enjoyed today's virtual class. We'll be back soon with another edition of Melt University 2020.